The transport ship docked with a heavy clang that echoed through the metal corridors. Doyen grabbed his supply bag and stepped through the airlock into the Vernathi refugee vessel. The air smelled different here, like copper and something sweet he couldn't name. His boots made soft sounds on the floor as he walked deeper into the ship. A tall alien waited for him at the end of the corridor. Commander Velthara stood nearly 8 feet tall, with gray skin that looked like stone and 3 fingers on each hand. His eyes were large and golden, and they looked at Doyen with something that might have been disappointment. "You are the human they sent," Velthara said. His voice rumbled like distant thunder. "Yes, sir. I'm Doyen. I'm here to help with the children. Cubs," Velthara corrected sharply. "We call them cubs. And I do not understand why the Council believes we need human assistance. This is a Vernathi matter." Doyen had read the reports during his 3-week journey to reach the refugee fleet. The Vernathi homeworld had died when their sun collapsed. Only one ship escaped with survivors. 200 cubs made it out, but none of their parents survived. Every adult warrior had stayed behind to buy time for the evacuation. Now those cubs lived on this massive ship, traveling to a new world they had never seen. "I'm just here to observe and help where I can," Doyen said quietly. "May I see the cubs?" Velthara's expression tightened, but he turned and walked down another corridor. Doyen followed. They passed through several sections of the ship. Other Vernathi adults watched him with those golden eyes. Some looked curious. Most looked like they wished he wasn't there. They reached a large room that must have been designed as a training hall. Young Vernathi sat in small groups on the floor. They were smaller than the adults, about the size of human 10-year-olds, though Doyen knew their ages ranged from 5 to 12 in human years. Their skin was lighter gray than the adults, and their eyes seemed even bigger on their small faces. But what caught Doyen's attention was the pile of fabric in the center of the room. Beautiful uniforms in deep blue and silver lay tangled together like someone had thrown them there in anger. The cub sat as far from the pile as possible. "This is the problem," Velthara said, his voice tight with shame. "In 3 days we hold the rite of remembrance, a ceremony to honor our dead. Every cub must wear their family uniform and speak their parents' names. But they refuse to dress. They dishonor their families and our entire species." Doyen watched the cubs. They weren't playing or talking much. They sat quietly, some staring at the uniforms, others looking at the floor. One small cub had tears running down his face. "Have you asked them why?" Doyen asked. "Asked?" Velthara's voice rose. "They are cubs. They must obey. This is not a discussion. Our traditions are clear. Refusing the uniform is the greatest dishonor a young Vernathi can commit." An older Vernathi approached them. This one moved more slowly and wore simple robes instead of military dress. "Commander, perhaps you should let me speak with the human." The voice was softer, almost kind. Velthara made a sound like grinding rocks, but walked away. The older Vernathi turned to Doyen with a slight bow. "I am Elder Kareth. I work as a physician here. I was the one who suggested the council send someone like you." "Someone like me?" "Someone who sees with different eyes." Kareth gestured to a bench near the wall. They sat down together, still watching the cubs. "The commander thinks the cubs are being defiant. He believes they have forgotten their honor because they are young and foolish." "But you don't think that?" Doyen said. "No. I have watched them. They are afraid, not defiant. But I am old, and the commander does not listen to old physicians who question tradition." Kareth's golden eyes studied Doyen carefully. "Tell me, human, what do you see when you look at those cubs?" Doyen was quiet for a moment. He watched a girl cub reach toward the pile of uniforms, then pull her hand back quickly. Another cub, a boy who seemed to be the oldest, stared at the uniforms with an expression that looked like pain. "I see children who lost everything," Doyen said slowly. "I see kids who are scared and sad and trying to be brave because that's what everyone expects." Kareth nodded. "Yes, now look at the uniforms." Doyen studied the pile more carefully. The uniforms were beautiful but complex. Multiple layers of fabric with straps and buckles, metal clasps shaped like stars, ceremonial belts with intricate patterns. He could see sections that would go over the shoulders, around the waist, across the chest. Each piece seemed to connect to another piece in a specific way. "Those are complicated," Doyen said. "Very complicated," Kareth agreed. "Each uniform tells a story. The shoulder clasps show the parents' military achievements. The belt pattern represents the family's ancestral territory. The way the fabric drapes indicates the family's status. Every Vernathi cub learns to wear these uniforms from their parents. It is a sacred teaching moment, passed from generation to generation. Understanding began to dawn on Doyen. But these cubs don't have parents to teach them. Exactly. Kareth's voice was sad. The commander and other adults assume the cubs should simply know. In our culture, this knowledge is considered instinctive, part of being Vernathi. But it is not instinctive. It is taught through patience and practice and love. These cubs never received those lessons. So they're not refusing because they don't care, Doyen said. They're refusing because they don't know how and they're ashamed to admit it. I believe so. But when I suggested this to the commander, he became angry. He said I was insulting the cubs by implying they were ignorant. He believes they are being deliberately disrespectful. Doyen stood up and walked slowly toward the cubs. They watched him approach with wide eyes. Some scooted back. Others just stared. He knelt down near the edge of the group, careful not to get too close too fast. "Hello," he said in simple galactic standard. "My name is Doyen. I'm a human. I came here to meet you." The cubs didn't respond. But they didn't run away either. A small cub with lighter gray skin shifted slightly closer. His eyes were red like he had been crying. "What's your name?" Doyen asked gently. The small cub looked at the others, then back at Doyen. "Taiyang," he whispered. His voice was high and scared. "It's nice to meet you, Taiyang." Doyen smiled. "This is a very big ship. Have you been here long?" Another cub spoke up, a girl with a serious face. 3 months we travel. 3 months since home died. Her galactic standard was better than Taiyang's. "I'm sorry," Doyen said, and he meant it. "That must be very hard." The girl studied him. "You cry for us. Humans cry strange. Water from eyes. Yes, humans cry. We cry when we're sad or when we see others who are sad." An older boy cub stood up. He was taller than the others and moved with careful control. "I am G1. Why are you here, human?" "The council asked me to come help," Doyen said honestly. "But I don't really know what kind of help you need yet." "Maybe you can tell me?" G1 looked at the pile of uniforms. His face showed so many emotions at once that Doyen felt his heart hurt. "They want us to wear those. For the ceremony. The rite of remembrance? Yes, we must wear family uniforms. We must speak parent names. We must show we are true Vernathi." Jiwan's voice cracked slightly. "But we cannot or will not." Commander Velthara's voice came from behind Doyen. The commander had returned and was watching with those hard golden eyes. Jiwan straightened his back, trying to look brave. "Cannot," he said firmly. "We try, we fail. Better to refuse than to shame our dead parents with wrong wearing." Velthara looked like he wanted to argue, but Kareth stepped forward. Perhaps Doyen could spend some time with the cubs. Learn about their situation, as an observer only. The commander stared at Doyen for a long moment. Finally he spoke. "You have 3 days until the ceremony. If the cubs still refuse to wear their uniforms, we will cancel the ceremony. This will bring great shame to our people." He turned and left without waiting for a response. Doyen looked back at the cubs. They were all watching him now. Taeyang, Jiwan, the serious girl, and many others. Their faces showed fear and hope mixed together. "Can I stay here with you for a while?" Doyen asked. "Just to talk?" Slowly, very slowly, some of the cubs nodded, and Doyen sat down on the floor among them, ready to listen. Doyen sat with the cubs for the rest of that day. At first they were quiet and nervous. He didn't push them to talk. Instead, he pulled out some wrapped candies from his bag, the kind that were safe for most alien species to eat. The sweet smell caught their attention. "Would anyone like to try human candy?" he asked, holding out the small wrapped pieces. Taeyang was the first to creep forward. His small 3-fingered hand reached out carefully and took one piece. He sniffed it, then slowly unwrapped it and put it in his mouth. His golden eyes went wide. "Sweet," he said, surprised. "Very sweet." Soon other cubs came forward. They took candies and sat near Doyen, though still keeping some distance. The serious girl from before sat down across from him. She unwrapped her candy slowly, watching him the whole time. "I am Minji," she said. "Taeyang is my clutch brother. We came from same birth group." "It's good to meet you properly, Minji," Doyen said. "Are you taking care of Taeyang?" "I try. He is small. Other cubs sometimes are mean because he cannot do things they can do." Minji's voice was protective. "But I protect him." Another cub joined them, a boy with lighter gray skin than most. "I am Hyan. You are first human I meet. You are shorter than I thought humans would be." Doyen smiled. "Some humans are tall, some are short. I'm somewhere in the middle." But you only have 2 fingers and thumb, Hyun said, pointing at Doyen's hands. How do you hold things good? We manage, Doyen said, showing how he could grasp a candy wrapper. Our bodies are different, but we figure out ways to do what we need to do. More cubs gathered around slowly. They asked questions about humans, about Earth, about what candy tasted like on his world. Doyen answered patiently, glad to talk about anything that made them relax. But his eyes kept drifting to the pile of uniforms in the center of the room, and he noticed the cubs never looked at them directly. After a while, when the cubs seemed more comfortable, Doyen asked carefully, "Can you tell me about the uniforms? What makes them special?" The cubs went quiet. Some looked down. Others glanced at each other nervously. Finally, Jiwon spoke from where he sat a little apart from the group. "Each uniform belongs to a specific family," he said. "My uniform carries my father's marks. He was a commander like Velthara. He led defense of the Southern Shield when the sun began to die." Jiwon's voice was proud but also full of pain. "The shoulder clasps have stars. Each star is a battle he won. The belt shows my family protected the mountain territories for 50 generations. That sounds very important," Doyen said gently. "It is most important thing," Jiwon said. "When cub wears family uniform first time, parent helps them dress. Parent explains each piece, each mark, each symbol. Parent teaches the proper way to fasten clasps, to tie belts, to drape fabric. This teaching moment is sacred. It means cub is ready to carry family honor." "But you don't have parents to teach you?" Doyen said softly. Jiwon's jaw tightened. No parents. We watched them dress for battle before. We remember some things, but we do not know all. We try alone, but we fail. The clasps do not close right. The belts tangle. The fabric falls wrong." His hands clenched into fists. "When adults see us fail, they look at us with disappointment eyes. They think we do not try hard enough. They think we do not care about honor." Minji spoke up, her voice angry. We care so much it hurts inside. But we are cubs. We need teaching hands. We need patient voices. Instead, adults tell us we should know. They say it is instinct. But it is not instinct. It is learning, and nobody will teach us." Taeyang began to cry quietly. Minji put her arm around him. "I cannot reach the back fastenings on my uniform," Taeyang whispered. "My arms are too short. When I ask for help, adults say I must be independent. But I cannot. I try, but I cannot reach." Another cub, a girl who had been quiet until now, spoke from the edge of the group. "My mother made special change to my uniform before she died. A clasp that locks different from normal clasps. She showed me once, but I was scared that day and I did not pay attention. Now I cannot remember how it works, and I am too ashamed to say I forgot my own mother's last teaching." Doyen felt his chest tighten with sadness for these children. They weren't being defiant. They were drowning in grief and expectations they couldn't meet. "What are your names?" he asked the quiet girl. "I am Hyejin," she said softly. Another boy stood up. "I am Junho. My uniform is in that pile too. I know how most pieces work, but the ceremonial belt has a knot that must be tied exact way. My father's father taught my father. My father was going to teach me after evacuation, when we reached New World, but he died before we could have that lesson." One by one, other cubs shared their stories. Each one had a uniform that carried their family's history. Each one had tried to wear it and failed. Each one felt shame and grief so heavy they could barely breathe. When they finished talking, Doyen sat quietly for a moment. The cubs watched him, waiting to see if he would say they were wrong, if he would tell them to try harder, if he would be disappointed like the adults. "Thank you for telling me," Doyen said finally. "That was very brave, and I think I understand now. Do you think we are without honor?" Jiwon asked, his voice challenging but also afraid. "No," Doyen said firmly. "I think you have more honor than anyone realizes. You tried to do something very difficult alone because you didn't want to dishonor your families. You are carrying grief and fear and responsibility that would break most adults. And you are still here, still trying, still caring. That is honor," Minji frowned. "But we cannot wear the uniforms. We cannot do the ceremony. We will bring shame." "Maybe," Doyen said slowly. "The problem is not that you can't do it. Maybe the problem is that you're trying to do it alone when this was always meant to be done together." "What do you mean?" Hyun asked. "You said the parents teach the cubs. That means wearing the uniform is a two-person job, at least the first time. You need someone to help you, to guide your hands, to hold fabric while you work on clasps. That's not weakness. That's how it's supposed to work. The cubs stared at him. It was like he had said something they had never considered. But our parents are dead, Junho said. There is no one to help us. What about me? Doyen asked. The cubs looked at each other in confusion. You are human, Jiwon said. You do not know our ways. You cannot do parent teaching. That's true. I don't know your ways, but I can learn. And I have hands that can help hold fabric even if they only have 5 fingers instead of 6. I have patience and I have time. If you are willing to teach me about your uniforms, maybe together we can figure out how to help you wear them properly. The commander will be angry, Yejin whispered. He already does not want you here. Let me worry about the commander, Doyen said. Right now I'm asking if you would be willing to try. Not alone this time, but with help. Taeyang looked up at Minji, then at Doyen. You would help me reach the back fastenings? Yes. You would not laugh if I do it wrong? Never. Minji stood up slowly. She walked to the pile of uniforms and pulled one out. It was beautiful, blue fabric with silver threads woven through it. She carried it back to Doyen and laid it on the floor between them. This is mine, she said. If you truly want to help, I will teach you about it. But you must treat it with respect. This uniform carries my mother's honor. I promise I will treat it with the greatest respect, Doyen said. One by one, other cubs stood up and retrieved their uniforms from the pile. They brought them back to where Doyen sat and carefully laid them out. Each uniform was unique, with different colors, different patterns, different symbols. Hyun pointed to his uniform's shoulder clasp. See this starburst? This means my father led defense of Northern Sanctuary. 3 times he held when others fell back. This is our family's greatest pride. Doyen leaned forward to look carefully. Tell me more. I want to understand everything. And so the cubs began to teach. They explained their families' histories, their parents' achievements, the meaning behind every symbol and color and pattern. Doyen listened and asked questions and treated each uniform like the sacred object it was. From across the room, Elder Kareth watched and smiled. This was exactly what he had hoped a human might do. The next morning, Doyen returned to the Cubs' hall with a simple plan. He didn't bring any fancy equipment or teaching materials. He just brought himself, his patience, and a willingness to work slowly. The Cubs were already waiting. They had laid out their uniforms more carefully this time, not in a pile but spread out so each one could be seen properly. Doyen noticed they had even tried to smooth out the wrinkles. Good morning, he said. Who wants to work first? Nobody moved. The Cubs looked at each other nervously. Finally, Taeyang raised his small hand. I will try, he said, his voice shaking, because I am most scared. If I can do it, maybe others will feel braver. Doyen smiled at him. That's very brave, Taeyang. Come sit here with me. Taeyang brought his uniform over. It was smaller than the others, made for a young cub. The fabric was dark blue with green accents, and the shoulder clasps were shaped like leaves. My father protected the forest valleys, Taeyang explained quietly. He was not high commander like some. He was guardian of growing things. Mother said this was most important job because without food, warriors cannot fight. Your mother was very wise, Doyen said. Now show me how you think this uniform goes on. Taeyang picked up the first layer, a shirt-like piece. He put his arms through the sleeves easily enough. But then he tried to fasten the side closures and his small hands fumbled. The closures required pressing 2 pieces together in a specific way while turning a small lock. Taeyang's fingers kept slipping. Here, Doyen said gently. Let me hold this side steady. You turn the lock. With Doyen holding the fabric taut, Taeyang could focus on the lock mechanism. His tongue stuck out in concentration as he worked. Click. The lock engaged. I did it. Taeyang's eyes went wide with surprise. You did. Now the other side. They worked through each piece of the uniform slowly, the pants with their complex belt loops, the outer jacket with its ceremonial closures, and finally, the back fastenings that Taeyang couldn't reach alone. Doyen held the fabric together while Taeyang guided his hands, telling him up, down, left, right until the fastenings clicked into place. When they finished, Taeyang stood up and looked down at himself. He was wearing his full uniform for the first time. His hand smoothed over the fabric carefully, touching the leaf-shaped clasps on his shoulders. Then he started crying. Not sad crying, but something else. Relief maybe, or grief, or joy, or all of those things mixed together. Father would say I look strong, Taeyang whispered. He would be proud. Minji came over and hugged her clutch brother. You look like true Vernathi warrior, she said firmly. Then she looked at Doyen. I want to try next. By the end of that day, Doyen had helped 5 cubs dress in their uniforms. Each one was different. Each one required different help. Hyun needed someone to hold the complicated belt steady while he tied the knots. Hunyo needed someone to explain the sequence of which piece went on first, second, third. Another cub named Seo-hyun needed help with a shoulder clasp that required 2 hands to open, but 3 to close properly. Commander Velthara came to check on them in the afternoon. He stopped in the doorway when he saw Cub standing in full uniform. His golden eyes went wide with shock. How did you? He started to say. We worked together, Ji-won said. He was one of the cubs who had successfully dressed. The human showed us that needing help is not shameful. It is necessary. Velthara looked at Doyen for a long moment. His face was hard to read. Then he turned and left without saying anything else. He is angry, Minji said. Maybe, Doyen replied. Or maybe he's thinking. Sometimes people need time to change their minds. Elder Kareth came by in the evening. He smiled when he saw the progress. You have done well, Doyen. But I see not all cubs are dressed yet. Some need more time, Doyen said. He looked across the room at a girl who sat alone in the corner. She hadn't come forward all day. Her uniform lay untouched beside her. That is Yoonji, Kareth said softly. Her situation is most difficult. Both her parents were high warriors. They pushed her into escape pod themselves while they stayed behind to fight. She watched them die through the pod window. Doyen felt his heart break a little. She blames herself. Yes, she believes she does not deserve to honor them because she survived while they died. She will not touch her uniform at all. Maybe tomorrow, Doyen said. But the next day, Eunji still would not participate. She sat in her corner while Doyen helped the remaining cubs. More uniforms were successfully worn. The cubs were getting excited now, helping each other practice the movements, reminding each other of the steps. Doyen worked with a cub named Minho on the complicated shoulder clasps. Then he helped a girl named Yuna, whose uniform had extra ceremonial pieces for a special family designation. By afternoon, only 3 cubs remained undressed. 2 of them were willing to try, but their uniforms had particularly complex elements that would take extra time. And then there was Yoonji, alone in her corner. When the other cubs took a break to eat, Doyen walked over and sat down near Yoonji. Not too close, just close enough to talk. She didn't look at him. You don't have to do this if you're not ready, he said quietly. I won't force you. Yoonji was silent for a long time. Then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I ran, they died. I do not deserve uniform of honor. They wanted you to run, Doyen said. They wanted you to live. But I am alive and they are dead. This is wrong. I should have stayed with them. Doyen thought about his own losses, about people he had loved who died while he survived. He knew the weight Yoonji was carrying. When I was younger, he said slowly, I lost my family too. There was an accident. I survived. They didn't. For a long time, I thought that meant I should have died with them. But then someone told me something that helped. They said that my family didn't die so I could feel guilty. They died so I could live. And the best way to honor them was to live well, not to waste the life they gave me by drowning in shame. Yoonji finally looked at him. Her golden eyes were filled with tears. How do you live well when your heart is broken? One day at a time. One moment at a time. And you don't do it alone? Yoonji looked at her uniform. I tried once. After we evacuated, I tried to put it on. But it is too big. Someone grabbed wrong size in the chaos. It is adult size, not cub size. It does not fit me. Her voice broke. I cannot even wear it if I wanted to. Doyen leaned forward to look at the uniform more carefully. She was right. The uniform was made for someone much larger. That explained why she hadn't said anything. It wasn't just emotional pain. It was a practical impossibility. What if we fixed it? Doyen asked. Fix it? Yoonji looked shocked. You cannot alter a ceremonial uniform. That is against tradition. Is it better to alter it or to not wear it at all? Yoonji didn't answer, but Doyen could see she was thinking. He stood up and went to find Elder Kareth. The old physician listened to the problem and thought for a long moment. Altering a ceremonial uniform is very serious, Kareth said. But these are unusual times. Let me speak with the commander. That evening, there was a loud argument in Virnathi language from another section of the ship. Doyen couldn't understand the words, but he could hear the anger. Commander Velthara's voice boomed like thunder. Elder Kareth's voice remained calm and steady. Finally, Kareth returned to the Cubs' hall. He looked tired but determined. The commander has given permission, but with conditions. The uniform can be altered only in size, not in meaning. No symbols can be changed or removed. The work must be done with respect. And other Cubs must help, so this becomes a community effort rather than one human changing Vernathi tradition. Doyen looked at Yunji. What do you think? Yunji looked at the other Cubs, who had gathered around to listen. Taeyang stepped forward. We will help. Hunji's mother and father saved many Cubs during evacuation. They held defense line long enough for 3 extra pods to launch. Our parents escaped because of her parents. We owe her family honor. One by one, other Cubs nodded. We will help, they said. For the first time since Doyen arrived, Yunji smiled just a little. Okay, she whispered. We can try. That night, Doyen sat in the Cubs' hall with Yunji's uniform spread out before him. The other Cubs gathered around in a circle. Even though it was late and they should have been sleeping, nobody wanted to leave. The uniform was indeed too large. The sleeves hung far past where Yunji's hands would be. The torso section would swallow her small frame. The shoulder pieces would slide right off her shoulders. We need to make it smaller but keep all the important parts exactly as they are, Doyen said. The symbols, the clasps, the patterns. Everything must stay the same, just sized differently. Minji touched the fabric carefully. My mother taught me basic sewing before the end. I can help with the fabric parts. I am good with small detail work, Hyun offered. I can help with the clasps and metal pieces. Other Cubs volunteered their skills. Taeyang would help thread needles, even though his hands were small. Ji-won would measure and mark where alterations needed to be made. Yunya would help keep track of which pieces connected to which. But as they worked, Yunji sat watching with a strange expression. She looked sad again. What's wrong? Doyen asked gently. This uniform tells my parents' story, Yunji said. But when I wear it, I will stand alone. I have no family left, just me, a single Cub with no one. Her voice got smaller. All other Cubs have clutch brothers and clutch sisters. Some have cousins who survived. I have no one. The hall went very quiet. The Cubs looked at each other, and something unspoken passed between them. Taeyang stood up and walked to his own uniform, which lay carefully folded nearby. He pulled off one of the small ceremonial threads from the sleeve, a green thread that represented his family's Forest Valley heritage. He brought it back and held it out to Yunji. You can have this, he said. My family owes yours. Your father held the line while my family escaped. Without him, I would be dead. So you can carry a piece of my family with yours? Yunji stared at the thread, her eyes wide. Then Minji stood up and pulled a small blue thread from her uniform's collar. My mother escaped because of your mother's bravery. Take this too. One by one, every Cub in the hall stood up. Each one went to their own uniform and carefully removed a small piece. A thread, a tiny metal ring, a small section of decorative cord. They brought these pieces to Yunji and laid them at her feet. You are not alone, Ji-won said firmly. We are all orphans now. We are all without birth families. So we become new family. Together. Yunji started crying, tears running down her gray face. But she was smiling too. You would do this? You would share your family honors with me? We already share everything else, Hyun said. We share this ship, this journey, this grief. Why not share family honor too? Doyen watched with tears in his own eyes. This was not part of any plan he had made. This was something the Cubs were doing themselves, creating something new from their shared loss. How do we add these to my uniform without ruining it? Yunji asked, looking at the small pile of threads and tokens. Doyen thought for a moment. What if we weave them into the alterations? Wherever we have to adjust the uniform, we can use these pieces as part of the repair. That way they become part of the structure itself, holding everything together. Like we hold each other together, Minji said softly. They worked through the night. The Cubs were tired, but nobody wanted to stop. Doyen measured and marked carefully. Minji and several other Cubs sewed with surprising skill. Where they had to take in the fabric, they used the donated threads to reinforce the seams. Where metal needed to be adjusted, they incorporated the small rings and clasps from other uniforms. Elder Kareth came by around midnight. He started to tell them they should sleep, but then he saw what they were doing. He stood silently in the doorway for a long time, watching. Finally, he turned and left without saying anything, but Doyen thought he saw tears in the old physician's eyes. By dawn, they were nearly finished. The uniform was smaller now, sized properly for Yunji. But it was also different from any other uniform on the ship. Woven throughout it were threads of green and blue and silver and gold, representing every family that had survived. It told not just her parents' story, but the story of all the cubs who had lost everything and found each other. Try it on, Taeyang urged. Yunji stood up slowly. She was nervous, Doyun could tell. This was the moment she had been avoiding for 3 months. The moment when she would have to accept that her parents were really gone, and she would have to carry their memory forward alone. Except she wasn't alone anymore. Doyun helped her with the base layer first. The fit was right now sized properly for her frame, then the second layer with its complex closures. The cubs gathered around, helping with different pieces. Yun held the fabric steady while Minji fastened a clasp. Jiwon adjusted the shoulder pieces while Junho worked on the belt. It wasn't just Doyun helping anymore. It was all of them, working together like a family dressing one of their own. When they finished, Yunji stood in the center of the circle wearing her complete uniform. The symbols of her parents' achievements gleamed on the shoulders. The family pattern showed clearly in the belt. But throughout the uniform, tiny threads of other colors caught the light, evidence of the community that now surrounded her. She turned slowly, looking at herself in the reflection of a polished metal panel on the wall. Her hand touched the shoulder clasp that her father had earned in battle. "Mother would say I look strong, proud," she whispered. "Father would say I stand like warrior." They would be right. Velthara's voice came from the doorway. Everyone turned. The commander stood there, and for once his face was not hard and angry. He looked at Yunji in her uniform, at the cubs gathered around her, at the pile of sewing materials and altered pieces. "You have done something today that I did not think possible," Velthara said slowly. He stepped into the room and walked up to Yunji. He studied her uniform carefully, noticing the threads of different colors woven throughout. "This is not traditional," he said. The cubs tensed, afraid he was angry, but then Velthara knelt down so he was at eye level with Yunji. "This is better than traditional," he said softly. "This is new tradition, born from necessity and love. You cubs have taught me something I forgot in my grief and anger. You have shown me that strength is not just in standing alone, it is also in knowing when to stand together." He stood up and looked at Doyun. "Human, I did not want you here. I thought you would mock our ways or try to change us into something we are not. I was wrong. You did not change us. You helped us remember who we truly are, a people who value honor, yes, but also community, a people who are strongest when we support each other." "The cubs did this themselves," Doyun said. "I just held some fabric steady." "You did more than that." Velthara looked at all the cubs. "Tomorrow is the rite of remembrance. All of you will stand in uniform and speak your parents' names. But I think we should add something new to the ceremony, something to honor not just who we lost, but who we are becoming." "What do you mean?" Jiwon asked. "You cubs created something tonight without asking permission from adults. You took pieces from each family and wove them together. You made something that represents all of you, not just one." Velthara's voice was thoughtful. "I think we should honor this. I think every cub should add one small thread to a community banner. Something we can carry into our new world. A reminder that we are not just individual families anymore. We are one family, born from shared loss and shared survival." The cubs looked at each other with growing excitement. "Could we really do that?" Yunji asked. "Change the ceremony?" "Tradition exists to serve us, not control us," Elder Kareth said, stepping into the room. "If we cannot adapt tradition to meet new needs, then tradition dies with the old world. Better to honor the spirit of tradition by keeping it alive through change." Velthara nodded. "It is decided. Tomorrow you will perform the rite of remembrance. You will honor your parents and speak their names. And then you will create something new together, a symbol of who you are now." He turned to leave, then paused. "Doyun, the cubs call you friend. I think it is time I do the same. Thank you for seeing what I was too proud to see." After Velthara left, the cubs cheered quietly. They were exhausted but happy. Tomorrow would be hard, facing their grief in the formal ceremony. But tonight they had each other, and they had proof that they could face hard things together. The morning of the rite of remembrance arrived with artificial sunlight flooding through the ship's windows. Doyun woke early in his small quarters and put on his formal clothes. The Galactic Council had given him a simple uniform to wear for Official events, dark blue with the council's symbol on the shoulder. When he reached the Cubs' hall, they were already awake and preparing. Today they would dress in their uniforms one final time before the ceremony. But this time felt different. The Cubs moved with purpose instead of fear. They helped each other, without being asked, adjusting clasps and straightening fabric. Taeyang came running up to Doyen. "Will you stand with us during ceremony?" "I think I'm supposed to sit with the other observers," Doyen said. "But you are not just observer," Minji protested. "You are our friend. You helped us when no one else could." Jiwon approached with his uniform already on. He looked every bit the warrior his father had been, standing straight and proud. "We want you to stand with us," he said firmly. "In the place where parents would stand. You performed parent duty when we needed it." "This is right." Doyen felt his throat get tight with emotion. "I would be honored." Elder Kareth came by to check on them. He smiled when he saw all the Cubs in uniform, helping each other with final adjustments. "You all look magnificent," he said. "Your parents would burst with pride." "Will the ceremony be very hard?" Yoonji asked quietly. She stood wearing her altered uniform, the one with threads from every family woven through it. "Yes," Kareth said honestly. "Grief is always hard. But hard things become easier when we face them together. And remember, this ceremony is not just about sadness. It is about honor, about remembering, about carrying forward the stories of those who came before." The Cubs nodded seriously. They understood. The ceremony was held in the ship's largest hall, a space usually used for community gatherings. Every adult Vernathi who survived was there, over 3,000 individuals. They filled the room, sitting in traditional formation with military precision. At the front of the hall stood a massive display showing images of the Vernathi homeworld before it died. Beautiful cities with tall buildings that spiraled into the sky. Vast forests that glowed with bioluminescent life. Mountains that touched the clouds, and the sun, their sun, before it began to collapse. Doyun stood with the Cubs near the front. He could feel them trembling slightly, nervous about performing in front of everyone, but they stood straight, shoulders back, uniforms perfect. Commander Velthara stepped forward to begin the ceremony. His voice filled the hall, speaking in Vernathi first, then switching to Galactic standards so all species present could understand. "We gather today to perform the rite of remembrance, to honor those who fell, to speak the names that must not be forgotten, to carry forward the legacy of our people." He paused, his golden eyes sweeping across the assembled crowd. "We begin with our Cubs, who represent our future. They will speak for their parents, who gave everything so these children could live." Jiwon stepped forward first. His voice was strong and clear. "I am Jiwon, son of Commander Taho and physician Nari. My father led the Southern Shield Defense. He held the line against the solar storms for 16 hours, allowing 37 transport ships to escape. My mother stayed at the medical station until the last wounded were evacuated. They died together side by side as they lived. I carry their honor forward. I speak their names so they are not forgotten." The adult Vernathi pressed their three-fingered hands to their hearts in the gesture of respect. Some had tears running down their faces. One by one, the Cubs stepped forward. Each spoke their parents' names and deeds. Each stood straight and proud in their family uniforms. Taeyang's voice shook, but he did not stop speaking. Minji spoke for both her parents and her older brother who also died. Hyun honored his father who held the northern sanctuary. When it was Yoonji's turn, she walked forward slowly. The room went very quiet. Everyone knew her story. Everyone knew her parents had been heroes. "I am Yoonji, daughter of High Commander Daeho and elite warrior Soyeon. My parents commanded the final defense perimeter. They personally pushed evacuation pods to launch, including mine. I watched them through the pod window as the fire came." Her voice broke slightly, but she continued. "They did not run. They did not save themselves. They stood their ground so others could escape. They saved 237 lives with their last actions. I carry their honor forward. I speak their names so they are not forgotten." She paused, then added something not in the traditional ceremony. "I also honor all the parents who fell, because their children are my family now. We are orphans together. We are survivors together. We carry all their stories forward together. The adult Virnathi looked at each other in surprise. This was not standard ceremony format. But then slowly, they began to press their hands to their hearts again. Some nodded in approval. When all the cubs had spoken, Commander Velthera stepped forward again. Now we add something new to our ceremony. Something born from the wisdom of these cubs who learned that strength includes knowing when to ask for help and when to stand together. He gestured, and several adults brought forward a large piece of fabric, stretched on a frame. It was blank, waiting. Each cub will add one thread to this banner, Velthara explained. A thread from their family uniform, representing their heritage. These threads will be woven together to create a symbol of our new community. This banner will travel with us to our new world. It will hang in our new Capitol building, and it will remind us that we are not just individual families anymore. We are one people, united by shared loss and shared hope. The cubs had prepared for this. Each had already removed a thread from their uniform before the ceremony. Now they came forward one at a time and wove their thread into the banner. Taeyang added his green thread from the forest valleys. Minji added her blue thread from her mother's family. Jiwon added silver from his father's commander designation. Hyun added golden thread from the northern sanctuary. On and on, each cub contributing. When Yunji stepped forward, something special happened. Her uniform already contained threads from every other family because of the alterations. So when she added her thread, it was multicolored, representing not just her family, but all families. Perfect, Elder Kareth whispered to Doyen. She is the thread that connects us all. The banner, when finished, was beautiful. Threads of every color woven together in a pattern that had no formal structure, but somehow looked exactly right. It was chaos and order at the same time. It was grief and hope mixed together. It was the Virnathi people, broken and remade. Commander Velthara held up the banner for everyone to see. This is who we are now. Not perfect, not traditional, but real and strong. Because we learned that asking for help is not weakness. Supporting each other is not shameful. These cubs taught us that by refusing to pretend they knew things they did not, by accepting help when they needed it, by creating community when they needed family. He turned to Doyen. Human Doyen performed sacred parent duty when our cubs needed it. He did not try to make them human. He did not try to change our ways. He simply offered hands when theirs could not reach. He offered patience when we offered only frustration. He saw what we could not see because we were too close, too proud, too lost in our own grief. Velthera walked over to Doyen and did something unexpected. He removed a small pin from his own uniform, a symbol of high command, and pinned it to Doyen's chest. You are not Virnathi, Velthera said, but you are family. You are honor keeper. You are the bridge that helped our children cross from grief to acceptance. We name you Honor Parent Doyen. This is a title created specifically for you. You are the first non-Virnathi to receive it. You will not be the last, because you have taught us that family is not just about blood or species. It is about who stands beside you when you need support. The entire hall of Virnathi stood and pressed their hands to their hearts, the gesture of deepest respect. Doyen felt tears running down his face and didn't bother to hide them. The cubs rushed forward and surrounded him, hugging him as much as their different body structures allowed. Taeyang grabbed his hand. Minji patted his shoulder. Yunji simply stood close, smiling. Thank you, Jiwon said simply, for seeing us. The ceremony continued for several more hours. Adults spoke the names of their loved ones who died. The ship's historian read the names of every single individual who perished, a list that took nearly 2 hours to complete. Traditional songs were sung, prayers were offered, and grief was shared openly. But the mood was not entirely sad, because alongside the grief was something else. Hope. The cubs standing proud in their uniforms represented the future. The banner represented community. And Doyen standing with them represented something new. The idea that strength comes in many forms, and sometimes the strongest thing to do is admit you need help. When the ceremony finally ended, People gathered in smaller groups to talk and share food. Doyen found himself surrounded by adult Vernathi, who wanted to thank him, to apologize for doubting him, to ask questions about humans. How did you know? Elder Doyen thought about it carefully. I think maybe because I'm not Vernathi. I could see without the weight of expectation. You expected the cubs to know because Vernathi cubs always know. But these cubs grew up in unusual circum. Somewhere ahead in the darkness, a new world waited. A place where the Vernathi would build new homes and new lives. Where cubs would grow into adults and have cubs of their own. Where the stories of this day would be told and retold, becoming legend. The story of the cubs who refused to wear their uniforms until a human helped them understand that needing help was not dishonor. That standing proud sometimes meant accepting support. That the strongest thing anyone could do was admit when they couldn't do something alone. And in that new world, in a place of honor in the Capitol building, the banner would hang, threads of every color woven together, a symbol of a people who learned to be strong in new ways, who learned that survival required adaptation, who learned that sometimes the most important help comes from the most unexpected places. Come on, Juan said finally. It is late. We should sleep. The cubs filed out of the observation deck, heading back to their quarters, but they walked differently now. Heads high, shoulders back. Not because they were hiding their grief, but because they had learned to carry it with dignity. Not because they were alone, but because they knew they had each other. Doyen watched them go, then looked down at the small banner in his hands. He pressed it to his heart in the Vernathi gesture of respect. Thank you, he whispered to the stars, for letting me be part of their story. And somewhere in the darkness, moving toward an unknown future, a ship full of survivors traveled on. Broken but not defeated. Grieving but not hopeless. Changed by loss but also changed by the unexpected friendship between a human and a group of alien children who taught each other what it really meant to stand proud.